Check it out. It's the Laugh to Learn podcast. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 11 of the Laugh to Learn podcast, your weekly source for a comedic spin on the goings-on in the world. I come to you from the Great White North every single Tuesday evening, Eastern Standard Time, fresh for download, that way you can listen to it at work. Wednesday morning for everyone around the world, maybe Wednesday afternoon for some of you, because there's people all over the world listening now, which is fucking awesome. This podcast comes to you ad-free every week, and all that I ask is for you to hit the subscribe button on whatever podcast platform you're listening to, or on YouTube. Hit that, ring that bell, as the kids say now, and tell your friends about me, either in person or with a share over all and any of the social medias that you happen to be involved in. This week was a real busy one for me, and a really good one too. I launched a new MMA show called Ultimate Fight Companions over on Twitch and YouTube. You can catch me alongside the Muay Thai fighter himself and co-owner of Take More Entertainment, which is the production company that helps me put this show together each and every week, Mate Parissa, live during all UFC pay-per-views. The next one being Saturday, May 11th. And we cleaned up. This was our first episode, by far the highest numbers that I've ever done on pretty much anything for a first episode. We racked up over 1,200 viewers, over 2,000 minutes watched live. I'm not sure what our, because there's like an archive so people can go back and watch it. I don't know what the minute and view count is on that. But those are huge live numbers for a first time out, so I need to figure out how to move those people over here, because we did really well, and we're definitely going to be doing it again. And the funny thing about it too, just as a side note, while we were doing it live, the way we had it all set up, we couldn't actually see if anyone was watching, so we didn't know, and we were honestly like, we talk about it a few times on camera where Mate or I or whoever would be like, are we, like, is there anyone watching? And like, it was like, I don't know, like, we could just be talking to no one. Turns out we were talking to 1,200 people at various times throughout the evening, so that's fucking awesome. So I really didn't announce the show last week because it came together sort of last minute, just like everything I do, and it all happened really fast, just like everything Mate does. So this week we have some interesting things to cover, and it'll be a little bit less on the political side. Of course, there's probably going to be some political aspects to it, but I'm not going to focus on those. So New Zealand has made the manifesto of the white national terrorist, they have kept it as an illegal document. Julian Assange was a complete dumbass. Closer to home, some Ontario teachers are preparing for big changes in education, and the largest aircraft in history took flight just a few days ago. But I'll start off today with the unfortunate burning of a landmark site in Paris, the Notre Dame Cathedral. Yesterday, the world watched as a major Gothic landmark burned for hours, wondering what would be left at the end, and today, we were able to finally see photos and videos from around and inside the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, and they really do tug at the heartstrings. The church has been under what was declared to be an emergency restoration after several major cracks had opened up in the over 850-year-old stone walls. Now, of course, there's been lots of work done previously on it, but nothing major, nothing like what they were talking about and in the middle of doing when this fire broke out. Now, luckily, a number of the heavy and rather famous angels and saints carved in marble on the roof were removed 4 days ago because they were actually afraid of a major collapse, and it just kind of worked out that the statues had never been removed and resurfaced since the original construction because they weigh way too much and we didn't have the technology to take them down. But now they were able to. So literally 4 days ago, so 3 days before the fire, they took these statues down and they've been sent to the south of France for resurfacing. So none of the major carvings and statues from the roof actually were destroyed in the fire, which is great luck, some would say. Others may even call it divine intervention. The fire itself has not had a direct cause announced, but we do know that it centered around the wood scaffolding and the wooden 2/3 of the roof. The fire department currently has stated that they believe the construction is to blame, but that they do not believe anyone to be at fault or there to be any malicious intent behind the fire. Now, I found it interesting, and it's just interesting to note that Windsor Castle in the UK, when you kind of do some research into fires in these old stone structures, it's a similarly old structure, several hundred years old. It has a permanent team of fire deputies, that's in quotes because that's what they call them, on staff, which patrol 24 hours a day. And they've had to put out over 2,000 fires since 2008, which is a little bit less than one fire a day, which is crazy. So you can understand why they have these people patrolling. And most of these fires are actually caused by faulty wiring because, believe it or not, there is a reason we stopped building big-ass houses out of stone. Now, I actually have a theory because I know damn well that I shouldn't ever step inside a church again, and this, to me, is absolute proof, because if we're being honest, God probably saw some bad motherfucker walk up in his house that day, and he said, not today, okay? Dude's lucky he wasn't walking outside, but God was probably replying to a text, and his lightning bolt didn't get there in time. So, unfortunately, he hit the roof, and we all know how it turned out. And a large donation fund has already raised 28 of 100 million euro to pay for the reconstruction effort. And the Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, has said he hopes to have the building fully restored in 5 years. This coming just hours after experts have put the estimate at 10 to 15 years. Politics. Now, speaking of politics, I'm going to try, as I mentioned before, to stay as apolitical as I can with this one and for pretty much this whole episode this week, and just give the facts on what exactly is happening, and I've thrown in a few little moments where I can sort of just rant about the changes themselves that I am about to talk about. So, here in Canada, we have a public school system, as with much of the modern world. And it's actually here, it's run by each province individually. So for those of you who may live in the United States, our provincial system, our provinces are set up quite similarly to the states in the U.S., although our provinces are nationally aligned together, whereas the states are all separate signatures to your constitution, which you should hopefully know about. But the federal government does provide some funding for public schools here, but all decisions are made at the provincial level as opposed to at the federal level. And again, I haven't said it yet, so not again, but we do have a private school system in Ontario, and this has, as far as I can tell, no changes to the private school system because, of course, they have some mandates they have to meet, but I don't think these curriculum mandates are applied to them, and it probably would have very little impact on them. So here in Ontario, we learned about a month ago now, I think it was March 11th, about sweeping changes to the education system. Don't worry, I'm not coming to you from the future. And since technically I'm coming to you from the past because you record in the past. Anyways, and since we learned about these sweeping changes to the education system, I've had a lot of people bringing it up in conversation. I wasn't going to talk about it really at all, but I think I should cover the bigger changes here and now and provide some of my opinion on them. Now, these changes, just to break it down, they include new math and sex ed curriculums, a cell phone ban in all classrooms, which I think is fantastic. I'm not really going to talk much about it because it's that simple. Students will not be allowed to have cell phones within classrooms. It was like that. I was in grade 9 when the iPhone came out, so even then, like, not everyone had flip phones until I was in I want to say I was in grade 11 or probably grade 12 when I had my first smartphone. And smartphones just weren't really a thing when I was in school, not to the extent that they are now. We only had Facebook, Twitter. I don't think I had Twitter until I left high school. Like, it just wasn't really a thing. It was around, but not many people really used it. Maybe a bit in my last year, but phones have taken over schools. I just think it's a good thing that they're gone. Where was I? We are also going to have an increase in classroom sizes, not physical sizes, but the number of students in a classroom. So the biggest change, obviously, for anyone who's been following this story or anyone who's just heard about it for the first time can probably guess the biggest change coming will be the classroom sizes. So it was announced that students in each class will increase from the current average, and unfortunately they use averages to benchmark these. They don't use like firm numbers. So currently the average province-wide is 22 students per classroom with one teacher, and this is in high school, secondary, which is for us it's grades 9 to grade 12. So you're like 14 to 17. You can be I was 18 when I graduated, because my birthday's in June. Literally, it was my birthday, and then I wrote my last exam like exactly 7 days after my birthday. So, holla. That's way too much information to be spewing right now. Either way, so we are increasing from an average of 22 students in each high school classroom up to 28. Now, this will line Ontario up much closer with the other provinces around the country. They've also said that not one teacher will lose their job because of this. The president of the Secondary School Teachers Federation strongly disagreed with this statement, as you would probably expect he would, and he claims that it will affect roughly 5,500 jobs, which is 20% of secondary school teachers. Now, this number specifically, both these numbers, I believe, are rather over and understated, and as always, I bet you the truth lies somewhere in the middle, but I have to say it's probably much closer to 5,500 than it is 0. So, and that is our Minister of Education came out and said it will affect no jobs. So there are very little changes to all levels of primary school, so kindergarten, grades 1 through 3, and grades 4 through 8. They're changing it by like decimal places, and I don't want to talk about that because I don't know about education at that level where I can speak to a change of, it's like 23.4 up to 24.2 students per classroom. I don't know that has an impact, and I'm not going to pretend I can tell you about it. Now, these changes will roll out over the next 4 years. So, what I want to say is, at first, when I heard about this, I don't know if I can say that I was not surprised, but I was definitely not like overly upset about it because, okay, they're increasing the number of students in a classroom. I was always under the impression, and I went to high school in a suburban city, but still one of the largest cities in the province. So I went to a high school that was not tiny, but not big. We probably averaged like 30 students in a classroom, and I thought that was normal. So when I saw that we're actually changing from an average of 22 to 28, oh my God, that's 6 students per classroom that they're changing on an average. You are absolutely firing people. So I've already heard from several people who are currently teachers in multiple school districts, from I guess 3 different districts. I've heard teachers say that they are getting rid of people. Like, the funding is no longer here. We're shrinking class sizes, and people who do not have tenure are losing their jobs. People who do have tenure, who are in classes that have smaller numbers of students. So, for example, if you're in some sort of okay, I have to use an example that I haven't heard about. So I was a music student. If you were in, or a teacher of like a music teacher in a school, and you average, say, 23 or 24 kids, and I can tell you that in my grade 12 music class, there were like 15 of us, right? Those numbers drag your school's average down, and they drag your region's average down. So what they're doing is they're saying, okay, you used to be, or you are a music teacher right now, but music doesn't draw enough students. So instead of teaching music, we're going to move you over here. Or you can leave, but you have tenure, so we'll move you over here and we'll fire that person. That's literally what I've heard from 3 different school districts. So it's not good. It's really not good. I think that right now Ontario is on track to be the I think it's the 3rd lowest provincial in math scores, 3rd lowest province in math scores. I was a TA, a teaching assistant in a math course, a first-year business math course at they just changed my alma mater's name, which pisses me off. It's now called Ontario Tech University, but it used to be UOIT. But yeah, so I was a teacher of business math there for first year, and I can absolutely tell you that these kids coming out of Ontario do not know what the fuck they are doing. And we're going to get to math in a little bit, but I think that increasing rather the number of students and decreasing the number of teachers certainly can't help that. Now, I understand the arguments that people are having that, well, you know, if you have, because an average of 22 means that you have these classes of 15 kids. Like I said, I sat in a music class with about 15 kids. I sat in a philosophy class with about 15, maybe 20 kids. These are all in grade 12. I took an aquatics class. I was able to actually become a lifeguard in a class with about 13 kids. Now, I don't think that should go away because it's kind of essential to who I've become. Like, if I didn't do all those music classes, I wouldn't be sitting at a mic right now. Not that this podcast is life-changing, but I just did a broadcast with Mate, who was with me in that music class with 15 kids. He was also in that aquatics class with me with 13 kids, and both of us are able to sit in front of a camera for 3.5 hours and talk to 1,200 people. And depending on how that goes and my podcast goes, like, that could actually be what I do for a living. I would love it if that's what I did for a living. But those classes are what gave me that confidence. And I've heard people say things like that about like drama class, people who work in political fields, and people who do like sales presentations in front of massive groups of people. And I mean, like, I'm in my mid-20s now, and a lot of people can't do that yet. But those of us who went to those courses, we were drawn to those courses, have the confidence at a young age to sit in front of people and talk like that, to be able to formulate opinions in front of large groups of people and not be embarrassed about it. That's a big thing that you're taking away. And then on top of that, you have like people who studied like who I know who are doing PhDs in like weird things like in sociology and stuff, and they took those grade 12 sociology courses that I thought they were taking as a joke, just like they thought I was taking music as a joke. Just like everyone who's looking into schools right now is like, oh, those courses are a joke, just take math, blah blah blah. No, man, like, it doesn't. No, you have to realize that, like, sometimes taking those courses set you on a path and you can become an expert. Like, what if one of those sociology courses, which are totally going away, I mean, it's a social science, so maybe those will be the ones that stay. But it's probably a class of about, again, 13 to 15 kids in grade 12. I keep saying kids. They're like 17, 18 years old, so they're kids. And I just think it's so wrong to take that away. It's so wrong to take that away. And what was it costing us? Like, was anyone hurting for, like, when you talk about cuts, I said it'd be apolitical, but here I go. When you talk about cuts to government spending, the first thing that jumps to mind should never be the kids, right? We talked about autism, the autism cuts last week or the week before, and now it's this that I'm focusing on. These were all announced right around the same time. And I fail to understand, I fail to grasp why anyone who's looking for cuts jumps to, let's take it from the kids. Because there's cuts we can make in other places, and there's other ways we can tax, as I've talked about on this show, and I just think it's wrong to be shrinking class sizes like this. So, either way, in what is possibly the least controversial part of this bill, surprisingly, gender identity and sexual consent will be taught as part of the new sex ed curriculum. So for those that don't know, the Liberal government passed this sweeping, very drastic sex ed curriculum in their last term, 2 years ago now. And then it was immediately reversed, and they reverted back to a 1998 curriculum for this school year. And now next school year, they're going with this new one because basically they had a poll online, and something like 80% of respondents said they wish they didn't change the curriculum. So they're basically putting the Liberal curriculum back in. The only difference is with gender identity, they're talking about it in grade 8 instead of grade 2. I don't really have a problem with that. The only part of this portion of the bill that I don't like is that parents are given, and they were under the Liberal bill as well, but they'll be given the option of opting their children out of, quote, being exposed to certain topics, end quote. So, okay, parents need to realize that no matter how perfect you think your kid is, they want to fuck, and they're gonna. So let them learn how to do it properly. And if you pull your son or your daughter out of school during sex ed class, do you realize what's going to happen the next recess when they go back with all their friends who were just in sex ed class? They're going to be like, yo, did you know about this? Because, like, that's what we did. You know, like, kids all talk. That's what they do. They all hang out and talk together. Like, all the boys gather over there and they talk about all this stuff that they kind of know about, and they talk like they think they know about it. And the girls, you know, I wasn't there, but I'm sure they did the same thing. So that kind of pisses me off. But at the same time, I think it's good because you can pull your kid out of school because you don't want them to hear that they should wear a condom, and you don't want them to hear about gay people or transgender people, but their friends are going to tell them anyways because that's the way kids work. So I think it's good that it's still in schools. And for those who think that this will turn kids gay or transgender, it'll get them thinking in weird ways. I mean, all I have to say is you know that it exists, and did it convert you successfully? So that's just, I'm sorry, but it's just the way it is. If you were younger and you were hearing about gay or transgender people, your immediate thought isn't, I should do that. You know what I mean? Like, I was a kid and I saw a plane crash into the World Trade Center. I was in grade 1 in 2001 when I saw on TV a plane crash into the World Trade Center. Believe it or not, I didn't go, I wonder what that's like. I wouldn't have said fucking because I was like, I hated swearing when I was younger. But I should get in a plane and crash it I hope a plane crashes with me on it into the World Trade Center. No, because it doesn't sound that appealing. And guess what? Being gay or transgender, as accepted as they are, even kids know, still not that appealing. Kids are on the internet. The word faggot used a whole lot. They don't want to be called that. If they're gay, man. It doesn't matter if they find out about being gay from one person, or if, you know, from a teacher in school, or if a friend says something to them about it, or if they're 16 years old and they're like, holy shit, I think that guy or girl, whatever, is actually attractive. That's the way it works, no matter what. And transgenderism, I mean, we don't know a whole lot. We're certain about that with homosexuality. Like, it is actually proven that even if someone doesn't know what gay is, they can still be gay. And with transgenderism, I think you have to kind of make the same assumption, but that's a conversation for a different day. But yeah, my point is, if it didn't convert you when you heard about it, have some confidence in your son or daughter that it's not going to convert them, and they just are what they are. So the full curriculum will be released in May of this year. And lastly, the other curriculum that they're going to release is math, because it's reverting away from the discovery method, quote unquote, that some of you with younger kids or younger kids in your life may have seen. It's teaching mathematics based on pattern recognition, essentially. And basically, parents don't like it because they didn't learn it that way, and they were really struggling to help their kids with their homework, which I'm empathetic to. I understand the argument. And, you know, I think that all of the research shows that it actually helps kids more than it hinders them, even with their parents unable to help them with homework. And it'll have an emphasis now on financial literacy, which is fucking great, because now I'll have to explain to 17-year-olds why they shouldn't be buying stocks, as well as 25-year-olds. Hint, free financial advice here. If you can't tell me what EBITDA is, you don't know what you're doing, and you should use an investor to buy stocks, or you should buy into a fund, okay? You don't know what you're doing. The stock market is meant to take your money. So, yeah, the last change, but still to do with math, that I will discuss is in a separate bill, and it will require teachers to take a math test when they are going through the hiring process, teachers at all levels. So, first of all, just back to teaching financial literacy. My thesis in school was putting together a program to teach financial literacy to students. And the number one thing we came away with was high school students, specifically. Originally, they wanted us to do grade 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and first year of university. We flipped it because doing all of our research, talking with experts, educators, both from the university level down through the high school level, and one individual who focused on teaching math at the elementary level, although we were only looking, like I said, at grade 8, so we didn't really focus on that. But everyone said kids in high school don't get it when you're teaching about money, and they said don't bother doing it. Now, the number one thing people say to me after saying, hey, can you do my taxes for you? You're an accountant, you can do taxes. Fuck, I did not specialize in tax. Please, okay, tax is the most complicated shit. I would literally become a lawyer before becoming a tax expert, because I'd make more money as a lawyer, and it would take just about as much work, to be perfectly honest with you. I'd make a lot of money as a tax expert, but I couldn't fucking handle it. I'd much rather be a lawyer. So the thing is, teaching kids financial literacy is great. I think it's important to teach them. We included in our program things like student loans, how to understand mortgages and interest rates in a very simple way. But, like, interest is super fucking complicated. Like, super complicated. There's literally a full 6-month course, I guess 4-month? How long is a university course? 4 months. It's 12 classes, 12 one-hour classes, right? So that's 12 hours in class, plus an exam, plus 2 large projects, just to understand compound interest. Like, literally, there's a full course that I had to take on it, that you have to take for a commerce degree, which applies to anyone who majored in accounting or finance. It's nuts. Like, it's super, super complicated. And you want me to take these advanced, and you have to do like 2 math courses before you can take this course. It's super, super advanced mathematics. And you want me to take this to a kid who is working, like, doesn't understand factorials, doesn't understand, like, how am I supposed to teach this? Because I'll explain the essentials of compound interest for those who don't know. Basically, if you owe $1,000 over the next 10 years at, let's say, I'm going to use $100 because let's just remove a zero. So if you owe $100 at 5% for the next 10 years, right? How much money do you owe in total? Well, most people would be like, well, what's 100 times 0.05? Oh, that's 105. So you'd owe 105. No, man. It's 5% per year. So you have to go 100 plus the 5% minus what you're going to pay in that first year. So say you're down to 98. Great. Now you have to go 98 times 0.05 plus 98 minus what you already paid. Do you get the point? I'm pulling out my calculator right now so I can prove my point. So now we're down to $98 times 0.05, equals that plus the 98, so it's $4.90. So you're back up to $102. Now let's say you paid $15 in that second year. Great, you're down to $87. So I can just go times 1.05. So now I owe $92 minus. You get it? Like, compound interest is super complicated. If you followed that, good for you. You understand compound interest. Most people probably can't. And you want me to teach that to a kid in high school? Come on. Now, I'm spending too much time on this. It really bothers me. I don't think you should be teaching financial literacy to kids. I think you should be teaching civics to kids because they'll actually be interested in it and understand it. Now, I've written down, as part of my rant, one of my teacher's names, who was a math teacher who was a fucking dumbass, whose name I'm not going to say. So this guy literally was a gym teacher who got kicked out of the gym. Everyone who I went to high school with is going to know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't give a shit. Got kicked out of the gym because a kid got hurt while he was watching them. So they made him a math teacher in grade 11 or grade 10. I think it was grade 10 math. So, like, he was teaching math that he did not understand. Literally the dumbest motherfucker you could possibly imagine, okay? This guy should have taken a math test. He should have been required to take a math test. It's nuts that he wasn't. Plus, the biggest problem I have with... I know a lot of people who are trying to become teachers that are freaking out that they have to do a math test. Look, you go to school for 4 years to do your bachelor's, 1 year of school, and 1 year of placement to do teacher's college. So essentially, it takes 5 years in class to become a teacher. You can't take a math course in that time to understand how to multiply, because that's all this test is. It's like a simple multiplication and division test. We're not even giving you like a university math test. They're giving you a high school math test. And it's like a grade 9 math test that they're talking about giving you. If you can't pass it, I don't want you teaching my kids. I really don't, like, straight up. I've told this to teachers who've told me they can't pass it. Then I don't want you to be a teacher. I don't understand why you think you should be a teacher, especially if you're talking about elementary school. Because 1 or 2 bad elementary school math teachers, like, who don't understand math and are teaching it at the elementary level, can ruin a kid. That's a full year that is putting them behind. They can be super intelligent, super inclined with mathematics. But then what if in grades 6 and 7... you have 2 back-to-back teachers who don't know shit about math, who cannot teach it. They don't not that they can't teach it, because I'm not saying just because you know it, you can teach it. Because I've taught math. It's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. You have to be very comfortable with what you're teaching, right? But you should at least fucking know it. You should not be teaching elementary school and not know how to do math. Basic math, multiplication, division. And you're allowed to use a calculator on this test, okay? It's not complicated. How are you supposed to teach it if you don't know it? And like I'm saying, if you have a kid who comes from nothing, right? Education is, as is always talked about, the great equalizer. Our math numbers in this province, as I said, are falling. In the country, they're falling. They're actually fucking disastrously low. It's disgusting. It actually makes me sick how low our literacy numbers are going up because everyone has a phone and they can all read. Great. But we need our math numbers to be climbing. And mathematicians are the richest people in the world right now, right? Jeff Bezos, richest man in the world, mathematician. Apple, Microsoft, as I mentioned, Jeff Bezos of Amazon, Zuckerberg from Facebook. These are all the rich-ass people who did it themselves. How did they do it? They understood math, because that's what computers are built on. That's what the future, it's what the past is built on, let's be honest, and that's what the future especially is built on. If you have a kid coming out of a poor area who really has, as people would say, like, no chance in life, give the kid a chance. Give that child teachers who can at least, they can't make them an expert, but they can help them on the track so that they can get to high school and know how to do math. They can go through high school without a teacher like I had who fucked me straight up. When I got to university, I didn't know shit about math because he was the last math teacher I had. I went to school for music before jumping over to accounting. I had to teach it all to myself. But I fucking figured it out. It was hard as shit. And a lot of people wouldn't have done it. I know that a lot of people wouldn't have done it, and that's not right. I'm not fucking blowing smoke up my own ass. I'm saying it's fucking wrong that I had to do it. I should have had a teacher who made me capable. Instead, I had a teacher who forced me to strive much harder than I should have needed to when I got to university. And that's wrong. And kids who couldn't afford to have. I didn't need tutors. I'm not that kind of person. Not that there's anything wrong with getting tutors, but if you can't tell by the way I talk on the podcast, I'm a bit of a know-it-all, and I like to tutor. I don't like to be tutored, so I like to teach myself. And then I went and taught other people after teaching myself how to do it, right? But this guy literally screwed me. He was my grade 10 math teacher, and he's by far the worst teacher I've ever had, like flat out. And second worst teacher I've ever had. I had a teacher who was a complete bitch in elementary school. But the worst teacher as far as knowledge is concerned, that's for sure. So give kids a chance. If you can't pass a math test, take a math course. That's the way it should work. And if you can't do math, I don't want you teaching elementary kids. And yeah, I'm just going to end my rant right there. So I've got the Tampa Bay Lightning game on in front of me. I'm a huge hockey fan. Number 1 team in the league, and they are down 2-1, about to get knocked out of the playoffs halfway through the game. Crazy shit. By the time anyone hears this, it's going to be over, but I am waiting with bated breath because I love sports, so it's a big deal when something like this happens. And of course, go Leafs, go. So Julian Assange, who is the, for those who don't know, he's the rogue hacker and WikiLeaks contributor. So most people who are listening to the podcast will for sure remember WikiLeaks for giving up Hillary Clinton and the DNC's hacked emails during the last election. WikiLeaks also did some other shit that we're going to talk about in a second. So he was the lead hacker and contributor, and he was arrested after being holed up for 5 years in the Ecuadorian embassy in London. In what is by far the dumbest stunt that anyone has ever committed, to be perfectly honest with you. So Assange hid for 5 years in this tiny little small embassy as a political refugee on sovereign Ecuadorian land. Of course, once you're inside an embassy, that country controls, it's as if you're in that country, right? So he couldn't leave, couldn't go anywhere. They can't land a helicopter on the property. It's too small, and he's just stuck there for 5 years. So he was wanted for skipping bail in England, and ultimately he went to the embassy because he was facing sexual assault charges in Sweden. And he was, of course, the hacker who worked with Chelsea Manning, who was at the time named Bradley Manning, a transgender who underwent surgery and a name change later, to release thousands of classified U.S. documents without redaction, which led to the capture, detriment, and even death of several U.S. and allied spies and spy contacts around the world. Assange had his internet access removed roughly 2 years ago, but he kept getting caught breaking this rule, and ultimately the Ecuadorian president just recently revoked his refugee status because not only was he breaking all these rules like that, but he was being apparently rude to staff, breaking in-house rules. Like you're inside an embassy, which is like a federal employment building, right? So there's procedures and policies you have to follow, and he just wasn't following them. He just didn't give a shit. So he was just breaking all these rules, and then ultimately what the president of Ecuador says tipped him over the edge and made him revoke his status was that he began becoming aggressive towards security within the embassy. Now, to top it all off, Sweden has dropped all charges against him. He was falsely accused, and they dropped the charges several years ago. In the UK, he's facing 6 months because he skipped out on bail by hiding in the embassy for a minor crime, and he's facing a maximum of 5 years in the United States, which means if he just faced up to what he did, he would likely be out of prison already. But now he has to sit in another tiny-ass room for 5 more years. You dumbass. Like, come on. He's facing 5.5 years, and if he had dealt with this before, he would not have had the bail issue with the UK, so he would have just had a fine. And the US probably wouldn't have given him 5 years. They probably would have given him significantly less. And then he probably would have served 3 and been out on bail, blah, blah, blah. We all know how it works. But now he's going to do probably 5 years in the US and be shipped back to the UK to do 6 months there. And then who knows? There are several countries that want him. We will find out in the future what happens with him. Now, New Zealand has still not removed the ban on the manifesto. I've discussed this before. That was written by the white national terrorist who killed over 50 worshipping Muslims last month. They've been actively raiding homes of individuals who downloaded this file, where they force people to prove that it's been deleted or face charges. And this is coming after a short ban on Jordan Peterson's book because he was in a photo with a guy that had a shirt on that said something offensive. That's not a joke. Okay, New Zealand. You got to have a little bit of chill now, right? Something awful happened to you. But on this side of the world, we know what it's like. It happens here all too often. But you need to trust your citizens. And quite frankly, they need to be able to trust that what they read in private won't come up 10 years later in a court proceeding. And you are not showing that that's the case. So this means ultimately that no social scientist in the country where the event occurred can study the individual who committed the atrocity. It means that no one within the country will know how crazy he was. Like, seriously, the dude was fucking nuts. I've said it on the show before. It is definitely not required reading. I really don't recommend you go down that road. Honestly, it's quite frankly not that well written. And it comes across as the crazy guy yelling that the sky is falling in the city center, and I trust that anyone who actually read it would see it for what it was. You have to be able to trust your citizens. Burning books, banning any sort of literature or comedy or movies, film, television, video games. I don't like it. In the U.S., they have a First Amendment. We have freedom of speech for a reason, right? And you have to be able to say no matter what you want to say. I get really pissed off when people tell me that Canada doesn't have freedom of speech, and the number one thing they bring up is that, you can't call someone a he when they want to be called a she. It's actually not true. That only applies to federal employees and police officers. So if you're a court judge, you're not allowed to do that. Now, there are smaller institutions. That's Jordan Peterson's problem was with the university who wanted him to follow this rule. That's a separate argument, but that is not limiting freedom of speech nationwide in Canada. You can call someone whatever the fuck you want. Look, right now, I will call you a fucking asshole. I'll say, the Holocaust didn't happen, period. I don't actually think that, but I can say it, and there's people in the United States who have told me that that's not true. Look, I'm ranting, I'm not even on my rant. Literally, I've had someone when I was in Pittsburgh one time tell me that I wouldn't be allowed. I would go to prison if I denied the Holocaust. I'm like, bro, that's not Canada. Like, you're thinking of Europe, man. We're north of you, not east of you. But I also don't expect you to know how to use a compass if you don't know those simple facts. Anyways, what the fuck was I talking about? Doesn't matter. Thank you all for listening. This is honestly the most fun I get to spend every week writing and laughing to myself and to my microphone. So please help share the podcast and get it out to the people. I also learned this week that my gracious hosts, actually who I have to pay, so I guess they're not all that gracious, but Podbean will be able to post to YouTube for me each and every week. So I'm going to try that out this week. I'm going to see how it goes. So yeah, I'm giving it a try. Because honestly, I hate making those videos. Live video, it's fucking beautiful. That's what I was doing on the weekend for our Twitch show. Just go to twitch.tv/Ultimate Fight Companions and follow us there. It's nice when it's live because I hate editing videos. I hate it. I'd much rather do research for this show for an extra 30 minutes rather than putting those videos together for upload. So hopefully it works to publish it through them. I'm going to find out today. If you listen on YouTube, well, I guess you don't listen to it this way, but if your friends listen to it on YouTube and they're like, yo, what's going on, you can feel free to tell them that Jacob doesn't know what the fuck is going on. If anything wrong happens, I have no idea, because it's going to be the first time, so we'll find out. And in the meantime, share this all over the place and spread it by word of mouth. Just tell your friends to search Laugh to Learn podcast anywhere they want, YouTube, major podcasting platforms, and of course, I am hosted primarily on Podbean. It shows up there. It's like 15 minutes before everywhere else, but if you want to be a keener, You can hear it 15 minutes early. And again, it's ad-free. It's all I'm asking. Just tell someone about it. Be like, you, listen to this podcast this week. You'll love it. Even if it's your grandma and you're like, grandma's like, oh, I don't like swearing. You say, Grandma, I know he swears a little bit. In fact, he swears a fucking lot, Grandma. But you need to expand your vocabulary. That's what you're going to tell your grandma this week. And if your grandma has passed away, tell your other grandma. And if both grandmas have passed away, tell one of your surviving grandfathers. If it's not the grandfather, mother, father, if both of them gone, that's quite unfortunate. You have to tell your neighbor. Go knock on your neighbor's door right now. Be like, let me knock. Hope you can. Yeah, you should have been able to hear that. Knock, knock, hello. And they're going to be like, hello, my name is, insert your name here. And you need to listen to the Laugh to Learn podcast because it'll, like, you're going to love it, man. You're going to love it. And your neighbor's going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? If your neighbor doesn't know you, they're going to be like, who the fuck are you? And if they do know you, they're going to be like, what are you smoking right now? And then you can get high with them and listen to my podcast. And it'll be fucking awesome. I made a note at this point while typing my script out that I feel like this is another week where I've talked way longer than I thought I'd be able to. Like, I literally came into this thinking this is like 30 minutes. I could have ranted and raved about, like, way back to the very first topic talking about teachers. I could still be going if I wanted to. So I don't know why. I really love doing this. So thank you all for listening. Now, this week, a really cool thing happened that I wanted to quickly talk about. I know it's my top story, and it's kind of short, but it's really exciting to me. So this week, the largest plane by wingspan ever flew for over 2 hours in California's Mojave Desert. Mojave? I always thought the Mojave was in, like, the Middle East, but maybe it's in California, because that's really what it looks like it's spelt as. Should have looked that up beforehand. Didn't. Here we are. And this plane is big. Like, seriously big. That's what she said. The wingspan is greater than the length of a football field. It's huge when you look at photos of this plane with, like, people standing beside it. Because up in the air, you know, like, fuck, a plane's a plane. You look at it, you're like, oh, yeah, it's fucking big, sure. But when you see, like, someone standing beside it on the ground, it's like, holy shit, this thing is huge. So, essentially, the builder combined parts from 2 Boeing jets to build this mega structure of the sky. Now, the builder is Scaled Composites, a partner of Stratolaunch Systems, which is one of the major up-and-comers in the private space industry, and is, of course, owned or founded by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen, because you need several $1 billion to get that high. The idea behind the massive plane is that they will be able to launch commercial satellites and similar spacecraft from the sky, as opposed to doing it on the ground. Now, they're hoping that this will save both money and time, as the plane launch will never be halted because of weather and other delays that you get while launching from solid ground. So basically, they'll be able to fly way, way up high, drop the satellite or whatever it is, and the rockets will take off and just whoosh and up and out of the atmosphere into orbit. And I also just saw that Paul Allen died in October, so I won't make a joke about him. R.I.P. Should have updated your software, bro. The company has said, because he was founder of Microsoft, it was a bad Microsoft joke. The company has said they plan to start launching satellites from their aircraft next year, in late 2020, but they're facing really tough competition to garner space contracts from the likes of, or underneath the likes of SpaceX and the United Launch Alliance, who both have proven technology. So, of course, when you're the new guy on the block with something totally different, it's kind of difficult to get people on your side. And yeah, I realize this was a short main story for the podcast, but I think it's important to highlight major achievements in innovation, especially in a time, and this really upset me. This is why I wanted to talk about this today, because I looked it up. So Kim Kardashian has over 60 million followers, and Stratolaunch has just over 14,000 followers. That's both on Twitter. So what the fuck, people? Like, come on. You wonder why there's problems in the world and, like, no one can figure out what's going on? Because everyone's listening to Kim Kardashian instead of people like Stratolaunch. Stop following Kim Kardashian. I don't. So, either way, I hope that bigger planes mean I can soon sleep on a plane without accidentally rubbing arms with the strange, creepy old man sitting beside me. And I hope that for you as well. I also wanted to comment before my rant. I should have said this at the top, and I'll mention it next week because I know a lot of people don't quite listen to the end every week. That Pete Buttigieg, who is the guy that I've been following as a pick to challenge Trump for president, he officially announced his candidacy for president. So, mayor of South Bend, Oregon, Pete Buttigieg. And I just wanted to say, because a lot of people. So, Pete Buttigieg announced for president. He's gay. He's been openly gay for several years. As he came out while he was mayor of the city, and he has this big hoorah, blah, 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 beautiful story. So, a lot of people are pissed because after his announcement, he kissed his husband at the podium. Now, the one thing that I want to say about this, which I'm probably going to rant about next week, is that I don't like it when any sort of minority focuses on the fact that they're a minority. I've made that really clear about Ilhan Omar, and every time she gets criticized, it's like, oh, you're an Islamophobe. No, bitch, you're just dumb. Like, it has nothing to do with what you believe or what you're wearing on your head. It's the fact that you sound like a fucking idiot. That doesn't make me an Islamophobe. Just like anyone who's pissed that he kissed his husband, they have to be equally pissed when Barack kissed Michelle Obama after winning, or when Joe Biden kissed, I actually don't know his wife's name, but he kissed her after winning. Obviously, you can't be pissed about Melania kissing Trump because she's like, stay the fuck away from me and give me yo money. Get it, girl. Same thing with Pence. He kissed his wife after the win. This whole thing. You have to be pissed about all of it. You can't pick and choose, okay? If Pete Buttigieg comes out and starts pulling the whole, you should vote for me because I'm gay, I'm technically a minority, and playing that whole weird fucking game that they play now, then I would be like, okay, we can be pissed about this because I don't want to vote for you because you're gay. That, to me, doesn't make sense. Just like voting for someone because they're a woman or because they're not a woman doesn't make sense. It's 2019. We have to get over a lot of this shit. I know a lot of people aren't, but I definitely am, and I'm sick of hearing about it. So anyways, I'll talk more about that next week, but I'm excited because he's said some things that I don't really like lately, but I can get on to him next week. After just saying he's gay, I said I'll get on to him. No pun intended. So for this week, though, I want to rant a little bit about ads that are played during pay-per-views and in movies and video games and other sort of paid entertainment products. So while I was doing my live MMA show with Mate this week, during the pay-per-view, Toyo Tire kept fucking popping up an advertisement in the bottom right corner of every fight at the beginning of, I think, or like 35 seconds into every round or something. Dude, you have to pay $60 fucking for that shit. And then on top of that, they're going to be like, oh, and here, and the ring is covered in ads, right? The fighters, not allowed to advertise. They, in the UFC, they have to wear Reebok clothing. They don't get paid fuck all for it. They used to be able to wear, like, you know, sponsorships, and you'd see, like, Laugh to Learn podcast on a hat someone's wearing walking to the ring, blah, blah, blah. But nowadays, it's all just Reebok, Reebok, Reebok. No, they're not allowed to promote anything other than Reebok. But the UFC covers the fucking Cajun advertisements and then pops a Toyo Tire advertisement on the screen during every fight. Get that shit out of my face, okay? It's, again, I just said this a few seconds ago, but it's 2019, all right? No one wants to see those advertisements. I have no idea why people don't bitch and complain about this, but I am one who's going to do it. And every time I'm live on air for that show, I'm going to bring it up. So this is probably not the only time I'm going to bring it up on this show, but the only time for a little while. I'm going to let it linger, as that song goes. You have to let it linger, or do you have to let it linger? I actually don't know what she's saying. I don't really like that song. Anyways, I'm going to leave it alone. And yeah, basically, long story short, because I'm just about at 55 minutes and I should wrap it up, don't be showing me advertisements in this shit. Quite famously, the most recent Street Fighter video game to come out, when it was like loading up into a fight, it would show you advertisements, and then in the middle of a fight, on like the walls behind the dudes, there's like advertisements, like billboards on the wall. Final Fantasy 15, which came out 2 years ago, one of the first quests in the game is sponsored by Cup of Noodles, like the company Cup of Noodles. And you had to go and get a cup of noodles and make it for someone. Like, get that shit the fuck out of my face. I'm sick of it. Either way, I'm not sick of you. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for sticking around. Remember, once again, this podcast is completely ad-free, other than Cup of Noodles, which I said like 45 times, but they ain't paying me to do it. All I ask is that you share it with your family and friends. Subscribe on any podcast feed, podcast app, or on YouTube. Hit the bell over on YouTube if you're there. Rate me, thumbs up wherever you can, and tell your friends about me each and every week. Thank you all, as always, and as you know, we are only a week away from another episode.